Welcome back to another episode of Creative Christians, the vodcast and podcast series that explores Christian creatives, their talents, their faith, and what they're doing at the intersection of both. I'm Tim Risto, your host and a fellow Christian and creative. Listen, today I've got a great interview for you. Super cool, very talented writer, and also a musician too. You get a bonus today. My guest today is Matthew P. Smith, more commonly known as Matt Smith, author and writer. Matt is very much a storyteller on several fronts. First, as a fiction writer, having just penned and released his first novel. We're going to talk a lot about that today. But also as a musician, being that he's lead guitarist for the legendary Christian metal band Saint, one of my all-time favorite bands, without a doubt. He's also written many songs for Saint as well. We may touch upon that briefly today as well. Matt lives in the Pacific Northwest with his wife, Nan, and has worked in the nursing and healthcare education industry for decades. So his new novel, The Divine Keep, is a thriller, was just published at the end of January of this year here, 2025, and I've actually got it right here. We're going to dig deep into this. I've read it. It's a lot of fun, and also a wake-up call of sorts. We'll get into all that, too. But we're going to take a deep dive into the book today and just have fun talking about Matt's writing and this book. So, without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome Matt Smith to Creative Christians. Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim, how are you?
I am doing awesome, man. It is so good to have you here today and talk all about your writing and this new book. This is pretty cool. First of all, let's set the stage a little bit. How did you first get into writing?
What really got me going is I was furthering my nursing degree last year. I basically took a year off and went back to school, took some advanced writing courses. And I just kind of got the bug. I started writing essays. And because I'm a Christian, all of my essays were biblically based. And I tried to integrate my faith into my writing. It's funny because, we use the term writing, but it's really talking to your computer now.
Yeah. Good point.
So there's a nice little feature on Windows. If you hit the Windows key and the H key, a box will pop up. And you could just talk into your computer. I did write it, but I talked it. I just got the bug writing all these essays. I had to do research essays for college. And I really enjoyed it. And I found it it's kind of easy for me to talk as opposed to like sitting down and writing or typing, because that process is really slow for me and my mind races a lot faster than my fingers can type or my hand can write. So when I was doing my essays, I would just, find a subject and do my research and just talk it into the computer, and then do a little editing and it just got me the bug. And I've always wanted to write a book of some kind. I mean, everybody wants to write a book, right?
Right,
It's
exactly.
like everybody wants to write a book about something.
Why did you want to write, a novel? What really motivated you, without getting too deep into the idea yet, what really did kind of motivate you to write this particular novel?
Kind of frustration and needing to get a message out that I thought was really important. And it's nothing new, Frank Peretti wrote, This Present Darkness, and he had us follow up back in the 90s. And of course I read those when they came out. But that wasn't even part of my inspiration. I didn't even realize what I was doing till after I got into it. I said, oh, this is kind of what Frank Peretti did, 30 years ago. Yeah. And just kind of this world that we live in there's a spiritual realm, and it's real. And we, it interacts with us, and we interact with it at different levels. But aside from that, the justice system, conspiracy theories, cults, it just became kind of a melting pot for all the crazy stuff that I could think about and wanted to do, wanted to talk about.
Absolutely. It's an interesting amalgam of stuff, which I really like about it. I think that's one of its charms to perhaps for lack of a better word, but I really like that about it, is this mix of things. So what I'm going to do quick, because I want to kind of introduce, at least for our listeners and viewers, the kind of the summary of the novel. So I'll go ahead and read that real quick, the one that's out there, just to give people an idea. Again, the novel here is The Divine Keep, and this is by Matt Smith. And this is what it's about. In the small town of Spokane, darkness festers beneath a facade of normalcy when Steve Richardson, a beloved feed store owner, is accused of the brutal murder of 2 young girls. Everything he holds dear begins to unravel. Stripped of his freedom and facing a biased judicial system, Steve's world descends into a nightmare. As he endures relentless psychological torment in prison, a web of corruption entangles law enforcement, expertly spun by a malevolent cult operating in the shadows. Enter Melissa Kraft, the determined defense attorney willing to risk everything to uncover the truth, tasked with representing Steve against overwhelming evidence and a town eager for justice. She struggles to maintain her career and reputation while pursuing the man she believes is innocent. As the trial unfolds, she discovers a sinister connection between the cult, the influential figures in the town, and Steve's wrongful conviction. Amidst the chaos, a former detective and a clandestine group called the Divine Keep reemerge, ready to confront the darkness that's infiltrated their community for far too long. As they dig deeper, blood rituals and ancient practices are uncovered, revealing the true horror and history lurking in Spokane. I love it. There's a lot there. And the final line there, will Melissa and her allies expose the conspiracy in time to save Steve, or will the cult's insidious grip on power crush their fight for justice?
I guess I should have made that a little shorter.
It covers a lot there, but it also doesn't give away. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in your book here, too. So, in essence, this is a lot about the danger of cults and the influence, of these spiritual forces of darkness on our daily lives in this world. It's a real thing, as you said. What prompted you to want to, explore these particular areas?
Well, I'm a true crime enthusiast. I love true crime. And I've been following a case that was a guy named Richard Allen in Delphi, Indiana, who was convicted of killing 2 young girls. And I think the guy was innocent. I think he got railroaded. And I followed that case, and I was just it's frustrating to see injustices. It's really frustrating. And involved around in that trial was a cult.
Interesting.
And a lot of the things in my book, I stole right from that trial. So I'm a thief. But,
that stories are based on real life things, though, So.
In the Richard Allen case, his prison guards were cult members who wore cult emblems on their uniform. That all came out in court. Wow. It was just one of the weirdest court cases I've ever gotten into. It just got weirder and weirder and weirder. And I started thinking about the spiritual influences of the cult, how far back the cults go, how well documented cult activity is, and Satanism and blood sacrifice. It's very well documented. I mean, so that was a huge part of it. It's kind of like let's take a look at this injustice and kind of see where it's coming from and how it emerges. And that was kind of one of the running themes in the book. Another part of it is my theological studies, on the spiritual realm. The Bible says, everybody knows, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. And if you break down that verse, it's talking about a hierarchy in the spirit realm. It's who's highest. It's spiritual wickedness. It starts out principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in high places, rulers of the darkness. And each one of those is like a different level. And so in this book, I go into the spirit realm, and it's right out of the gate, demons are talking to each other, and angels are present, and we're kind of getting a look into, my imagination of what's
right.
what's going on out there. And I started out in 1400, because these demons have been crafting their skills for thousands of years, in the spiritual realm. And so this cult is a baby of one of these fallen watchers. And I draw from the book of Enoch for that. My bad. Uh-oh, I'm going to get in trouble for that. That's not canonical. That's
That's right.
not the Bible.
Look, you're going to hear about that one.
But yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
I draw from that, and that original rebellion before,
Yeah.
that is in the book of Enoch, that I just think is so fascinating. How the angels, it gets into it in the book of Genesis. So Genesis chapter 6 talks about the fallen angels coming down and mating with the women and whatever. And Enoch, the book of Enoch, just kind of adds a little more to that narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Fallen watchers, and he's one of them. So in the book, I used one of them, two of them, and how he has to answer to his superior, and he gets in a little trouble. The demon gets in trouble with his superior demon. This is fun.
I love
fun
it.
Craziness.
I know it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Were the names of the demons based on anything from research, or just names you came up with?
No, they're out of the book of Enoch.
They are, okay.
And I shortened one of them to Aziel. It's Azazel, and Azazel is actually mentioned in the Old Testament.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look that up. I'm not even familiar with that.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
He's the one that the scapegoat is delivered to, after the sacrifice. One goat is sacrificed, and the others is put into the wilderness, into the undesirable desert, with the demons, the Azazel, leading us to this cosmic geography theology, which, I've been studying a lot of too, of, different places tend to be more evil than others on the earth. There's higher densities of evil in different parts of the earth.
Wow. That's kind of fascinating. More demons populating in certain areas, or
Well, yeah, they talked about the tombs in Gadara or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and the wickedness and the man, who was chained. Nobody wanted to go there. There's just, Mount Hermon, was considered the gates of hell. It was like some place where people didn't want to go, and it's interesting how that's where Jesus took the disciples to reveal to them that the gates of hell will not withstand the church. It was at Mount Hermon. I mean, there's a reason Jesus did what he did where he did it.
yeah. That's a great
Don't get me started on that, but yeah, a little bit of that stuff going on in there, and it's fun to write because I can implement all of the things that I'm interested in. And I created these characters. Some of them are based on real life characters. Some of them are based on my friends. One of them's based on my mom. Um, and it's just fun that you can create these characters. Some start out good and become evil. Some start out evil and become good. So they have different arcs, and you can kind of play with them and do things with them, their growth or their downfalls. And then you can whack them. If you want, you can whack them.
Great. You get a lot of freedom in a book. Well, I love the cast of characters. Melissa Kraft, the defense attorney. Who was she based on? Somebody? She seems like the lead character in the book, primarily.
I don't know. I just wanted a female hero for some reason.
Yeah.
No, I don't even know why. That name popped into my head.
Yeah.
And I just crafted Melissa Kraft.
Yeah.
I love her. She's amazing. I use the Briggs-Meyer personality chart to help me design my characters' personalities.
Okay. That's
So
cool.
what are they? What type of personality do they have? And
Yeah, let's just talk briefly a little bit more about some of these characters. I just want to kind of give our audience a little perspective too. You've got Thomas Hale, this former detective, who starts out. He's living in Costa Rica. I don't want to give too much
he's
away.
retired.
Retired, yeah.
Yeah, she pulls him out of retirement.
Exactly, and then he's pulled back into action. Got this commitment to uncovering all these injustices around the world, and then his friend Jack Mercer, who's ex-military, correct? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mozart, this YouTube influencer, which I think is a very cool addition.
Mozart. I stole Mozart from a real YouTuber that goes by Pavarotti.
That's awesome. Now I'm going to have to look up Pavarotti.
Yeah.
And then Linda Mann, who's the owner of, I love this, the Horseshoe Bar and Grill. And of course, she's got an interesting past, which I'm not
Very.
gonna reveal. Yeah, which I love that. I think there's a lot to mine with her character. I can tell already.
There was a lot to play around with her.
Yeah,
Because,
definitely.
yeah.
So in developing that cast, and you mentioned some were kind of based on real people, but what kind of did it take to put together that cast of characters for you to write them, to come up with them?
Well, it's funny because I just did it as I needed them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I just need a character. I need someone, to do this or do that.
Yeah.
And then you just create them.
Yeah.
And,
Great.
and you put them in there. And then you write their backstory. You write their description, what they look like, how they dress, what their style of speaking is. So you can change up the dialect for each character.
Yeah.
Are they really direct? Are they joke around? Like Mozart's just a wild man.
Yeah.
The YouTuber. So anything I do with him, it just fits. But some of the other characters, I got to be careful because I have to stay consistent with that character.
Yeah.
That was really important to me. And I'm not a trained writer.
Right.
I'm just a guy who had a little bit of technology. But no, you just kind of make them up as you go, and then they kind of develop, into something. And she was just kind of this great addition to the Divine Keep team. Now, the Divine Keep we are the Divine Keep. That's kind of how I see it.
Okay.
We are keeping something divine, something good and something holy and something wholesome. And that name took a lot of work to come up with.
I was wondering how you came up with that. Yeah.
At first I wanted to call it the Divine Shield. That was my first name.
Yeah.
But when I went on Google and Googled the Divine Shield, there were like hundreds of books
Oh yeah.
that used, that form of those two words in one way, shape, or form or another. So I went on to ChatGPT and I started asking it for alternatives. And
Yeah.
it gave me all these alternatives. And one of them was the Divine Keep.
Interesting.
And I didn't really like it at first. And then I started researching it and kind of thinking what it meant, and that's what it means. It's just we're trying to keep something divine, and and then it hit me that it's just a ripoff of the Justice League.
Oh yeah.
Kind of. It's the same type of thing, but
Right.
a little different. But all that stuff hits me later. It hits
Yeah.
me. It hits me later that I subconsciously are ripping off everybody's ideas.
Well, it is tough in some ways these days to be completely original. I think everything is kind of a borrowed idea, but it's always that amalgam of different ideas or previous
Yeah.
ideas that come together
And make it
for
your
a
own.
unique way. Yeah, and you.
Like every Saint song I've ever written is stole from somebody else.
Yeah, that's right. But because you wrote it and the amalgamation of the band members and everything, it becomes something
Yeah,
unique and different, And to that point, I love, again, this collection of characters because to me, I think it's just fun. I see a lot of potential for these characters going forward, too. Because, in fact, let's touch on this briefly. You're planning on writing a total of 5 books in this series. Is that correct? Is that kind of the initial?
Yeah, number 2 is on the way.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I've already got, I think I got the first chapter written.
Oh, very good. Okay, I
Yeah,
look forward to
that
that.
should be finished hopefully in a few months.
And this team of characters is who we're going to kind of follow through the series, correct? Or maybe? I love that. I see. That's what I like. The potential for change.
I'll put it this way. I'm through the first chapter and it's all new characters
Ah,
at this point.
okay. Very interesting.
See, because the Divine Keep is you and me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the people who want to do the right thing
Right.
and who will fight for it and put their lives at risk for it.
Protecting the divine.
Yeah.
I love that. That's actually
Yeah.
very, very cool.
Yeah.
Brief talk here about setting. I love, again, the Horseshoe Bar and Grill. That's a really cool setting. They meet there a lot, of course, throughout the story. You bring in this Davenport Hotel. How much of the settings, are based on real life settings for you or have some influence from real life locations?
The Horseshoe Bar and Grill is modeled after the Iron Horse Bar and Grill, which is in downtown Coeur d'Alene, but I didn't want to use their name. The Davenport Hotel is a historic hotel in downtown Spokane. Chattaroy is a real city in there.
Yeah.
Spokane is a real city. All the cities I used were just around here. Meadowwood Golf Course, where there's a scene, is where I golf, all the time. That's where I golf. And that's what's so fun about writing, Tim, is I got golf in my book. Okay? I got golf.
You're a big golfer, right?
I love the golf.
That's what I thought.
And I'm not very good at it, but I love to do it. Golf combines so many beautiful things into one day.
Yeah, exactly. Outdoors.
Yeah, just
hanging with fellow guys.
Yeah, it's just fun. And then like the feed store was just modeled after a little feed store.
Yeah.
About a mile from my house, I call it the Come and Get It feed store.
That's awesome. All right, so it's also got this great blend of genres too, which kind of referenced at the top here too. But it's a thriller, it's a courtroom drama, it's spiritual drama. You've got
it's a conspiracy theory. Drama.
Exactly.
I know. I had a real hard time when somebody asked me what it's about. I have a really hard time explaining that.
Yeah.
And when I say what you just said, they just give me a weird look, like, okay.
Everybody wants that pat, answer. What is it, But I think these styles all go well together. And again, was that just something that kind of evolved as you wrote? You didn't go like, I want to write this type of genre. You just kind of wrote, right?
I knew I wanted to do something with theology.
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew I wanted to do something with law and order. And I knew I wanted to do something with heroic characters. And I knew I wanted to do something with villainous characters. People are evil, man. Mm-hmm. And my next book is going to be, this one is going to touch on some very, very serious topics. A topic. And that's the goal, is to cover, over the 5 books, I want to cover 5 extremely serious topics. This one had to do with justice, injustice, and it help us to understand a possibility of why these bad things happen to good people. How does this happen? What is going on here? But then also in the midst of all of that, everybody kind of shines and a lot of good things happen too.
One of my favorite things about your book is that thing you mentioned at the top too, that we get a sense of those spiritual forces of darkness at work and of light too, for that matter, at work in the world. And it does really give a nice perspective on how those things can influence our own decision making, how demons could operate, how angels could potentially operate, in the day-to-day life of us in the world.
Yeah, and I go into angels and why they're restricted. Mm-hmm. Why do they not? I touch on that issue.
Yes.
Why our guardian angels have to hold back and what they can do, and it's just a lot of it's just my own imagination. But it's another my way of kind of coping with the world.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, because not everything has to be, exhaustively based on, scripture, of course. It's fun to just kind of use your imagination. That's part of what I like too about the creative Christians aspect too, is sometimes just exploring things, and it can be clear this isn't scripture, but it's something that is interesting to explore through our creativity, through our imaginations, which are a gift from God. So, why not, for those that are mature enough to understand, handle, that this is just an imaginative work of fiction, but it has some interesting elements in it. I think that's kind of fascinating. That's what intrigues me.
Yeah, I just pray that the book goes viral. I don't really push it. I'm not like, hey, buy my book. I don't do that. Right. I was just really happy to write it and it's on Amazon. You can find it. What's really cool, if you Google The Divine Keep, my book comes to the top.
Nice.
There's no competition. That's another thing I want to mention about that name. No one's ever used that title and that combination. So if you just Google the Divine Keep,
Yeah.
maybe try it later. Let me know what happens.
Yeah, I
And
will.
if you guys are listening, Google the Divine Keep, and it comes up. My book.
Excellent.
Pretty cool.
Awesome.
So, who knows what the Lord will do with it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, tell me a little bit. You mentioned you want to talk a little bit about the development of this.
Yeah, I use a program called AutoCrit,
Okay.
and AutoCrit is I don't have an editor, Tim.
Right.
Okay, so I have a friend who's an editor, and I sent him my first chapter, and it came back, and basically didn't destroy it, but I'm like, yeah, no thanks. And I told him, I said, I didn't want you to edit it, I wanted you to read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just read it. Don't. And he sent me back all these notes and my bad English and my terrible whatever, just how awful it is. And that's what you're going to hear from people.
Right.
A lot of times, especially if you're an amateur like me, you're just an amateur guy trying to tell a story.
Right.
So I used AutoCrit. It's a paid service. You can upload your whole book,
Okay.
and it'll analyze it.
Yeah.
And it'll give you all these statistics on it, like how are you overusing words? What are your character arcs like? What is the pacing? Is it dull? Is it slow? Basically, does your book suck or is your book awesome? And if it sucks, it will say try this. And it edits for you is what it does. It uses AI to edit the book, not the text, but the book, the pacing and the form or whatever. And it made a lot of suggestions. It said stuff like for Melissa, for example, it said this character needs more backstory. I don't see much about her, stuff like that. So then I could go in and I could add a backstory. So in the first chapter, I had to go in and add a backstory to Melissa, and then as I started doing that with more characters, understanding that my reader, they don't know the character like I do, so I have to give them some information about the character. So yeah, I used AI to edit it, and I used AI. I would question AI. I would brainstorm a little bit. I couldn't have done it alone.
Yeah.
There's just no way. I just couldn't have done it alone.
Yeah.
And this is what slows down a lot of writers. I also used a program called Novel Crafter, which allows you to go in, and once again, AI will analyze the script. You tell it what to do, and it puts it in order for you. And what I really like about Novel Crafter is it has a codex where you can design your characters right in the program, and you can keep a
That's cool.
profile of your characters. And what I do with all my characters, once I have their profile, I'll put it into ChatGPT and say, create an image for this character. And it reads it, and it creates an image. And this image made me shed tears almost.
Really?
This image. I put the first chapter of this book into ChatGPT, and I said, create an image. And this is what it
This is
did.
what it came up with. Wow.
I could not believe it.
Yeah.
It's got everything. It's got my hero right here
Yeah.
from the back,
Yeah. Really.
facing the corrupt justice system right here, who is controlled by the demons back here. Tim, it blew me away.
That's awesome.
So I utilized AI a lot, and I'm proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. To try to do something like this on your own it's an uphill battle. If you're just sitting down at a typewriter, I know a lot of writers who've never written a book because it's an uphill battle. And then you got and I did all the cover design. I did everything. If you publish on Kindle, it gives you Kindle Create, which is a program you download. Then you upload your script to Kindle Create, and that's where I did the chapter headings. You probably can't see that because the lighting's bad.
Lighting's low.
But you can do your book layout in there, and then it has a cover designer. That's better. Yeah, it's just a text. It just shows you, what style of font you want?
Right.
Do you want it off to the side? Do you want an extra large um, character for the first chapter? And so that's all provided by Amazon. And it has a cover designer, and you just upload your artwork, and it fits the book perfectly. And Amazon is print to order.
That's nice. So,
It's it's astonishing, is what it is. That you went to order my book, they printed that one book just for you.
right, which is great because then you,
Yeah.
the author, are not stuck with the boxes of books that you got to figure out, how you're going to ship them or whatever else. But also, you don't have a bunch printed until people order them, which is
Yeah,
phenomenal.
and I make $5 a book.
Okay.
Amazon prints it,
Right.
ships it,
Right.
and you pay $14.99.
Yeah.
And I get a third of that, which I think it's better than most publishing deals.
Yes. True.
And it gets, I'm all about getting the job done.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. Get it done.
Done. There you go.
Get it done. Anyway.
Well, okay. One quick question. This is a little off topic, but back to the characters for a second. I'm actually surprised because you've been in nursing and healthcare. Why there's not a nurse? There's not a medical or healthcare character as a major character in the piece.
No guitar players either.
Well, that's true.
I've thought about using a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I have thought about using a musician.
Yeah.
Elvis worked for the CIA. Or something like that. He went to the White House and he was on the drug task force.
Yeah.
It's like,
Interesting.
yeah.
Like
Characters are fun. It's fun.
Now, the whole faith aspect. Shows all about Christian creatives. How is, your faith a part of your creative process, in particular here with this book and writing?
For me, it's like making it line up with Scripture more than anything. Just having that. To me, the Bible is the most reliable text that we have in this world. It's the most unchanged, most reliable text of modern or ancient texts. We don't know anything about George Washington. We don't know. We heard he chopped down a cherry tree and never told a lie, right, or whatever. We know these things about them, but how much of it is true? How much of it is made up? He had wooden teeth, and he refused to kneel at church because he had bowed before no man. There's all these things about these, but I have more faith in the ancient texts of the Bible than I do in more modern texts, historical texts. So I like it. I like to just have a biblical filter, that kind of goes through it. And what's funny about this? I don't mention one Christian in the book, I don't think. No. There is one. There's one hidden in there. There's one tucked away. I did that because, people, their faith is personal and private. Yeah. And we don't know what Melissa Craft's faith is. Right. Or Thomas or Mozart or any of them. Right. Their mission comes through in the fact that they're all part of the divine keep, right? So that says a lot right there. God is like Rahab. Ah, yeah. God used a lot of people. Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah. Very true. God used a lot of people for a lot of things. Yeah. And like I said, I like those biblical stories. I like those tropes. Those biblical tropes that I draw on, and I think that's how my faith comes into it. Then I just try to have faith that somebody's going to read it. Yes. That's where my faith comes into. And I want to encourage viewers to check this out. Divine Keep is actually a lot of fun. It's a good read. It's fun. Go to Amazon's the best place to pick it up, right? Amazon? The only place. The only place. Yeah. Okay. The only place for now. Encourage everybody to head over to Amazon. Check out The Divine Keep by Matthew. On the cover, it's Matthew P. Smith, because there's a lot of Matt Smiths out there. So be sure and search for that. Another thing about Amazon that I love so much about this process is I can buy these for $5. Yeah. You can, right? Yeah, I
Yeah,
can buy them for $5.
that's nice.
And that means if I sell one, I make, $10 a book,
Right.
which is, 60 something percent. And it's, if I would have had to publish this to like a local publisher, I would have spent, several $1,000s. It would have been insane. Oh, we're going to have to print 100 books. And
We've talked about AI and Amazon, two tools that are great resources for people willing to use them well. And those are two things you've found that have been very beneficial to you as a writer in this process, that make it possible to do these type of things, as kind of a one-man band, so to speak. And I'm all for them. I think that's great. I mean, that's what these tools should be for.
one other thing I'll just mention briefly is you're all familiar with Angel Studios, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Angel, they have a guild, right?
Yeah. Right.
And you submit, I was going to submit my book, but they don't take book submissions
Oh, interesting.
and they don't take script submissions. The only submission they take is a movie trailer,
Oh, I didn't realize that. Interesting.
but they call it a torch.
Yeah.
That's what they call it.
Right.
And it has to be no more than like 5 minutes long. So it's like a long movie trailer.
Yeah.
So I'm casting for a summer shoot. We're going to shoot about 5 or 6 scenes from the book. And I'm gonna film it. I'm gonna direct it. I'm gonna edit it. I'm gonna do everything. And I've got some great actors that are going to help me out. We're going to be using a local bar. We're going to be using some street footage. We're going to do a golf course scene. And I'm going to just kind of try to represent the book in a 5-minute trailer. I'm going to submit it to Angel Studios. And once you do that, the guild members are alerted. There's over 1 million of them.
Yeah. Wow.
And they start watching this and they vote up what they want Angel Studios to make.
Right. The
So-
guild members actually pick what gets
Right.
done. Yeah.
Once again, in this modern world, we're able to sidestep the guy in the suit and the tie and go straight to the people. You people, go straight to the people with our ideas. So if you're an Angel Studio Guild member, keep an eye out for it because I plan on having it done like September.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
immediate.
Well, I'd like to follow up with you then and just talk about the process of, filmmaking and putting that together and taking the scenes that you do and putting it into a trailer. I think that'd be fun to talk about that process after you've gone through that. So,
It'll be fun to try to color match all my video
yeah, yes, exactly.
because I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, color correction is I use DaVinci Resolve for some work
Yeah.
that I do on just a little Blackmagic 4K camera, and it's fun, but oh man, it can be challenging, and you can get lost in the weeds quickly if you're not careful.
Very
So,
quickly.
the story behind the Divine Keep seems to me like that could be a good concept album for a Saint album. Could we see a future Saint album that's a concept album?
Rich and I yeah, but it would be completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to do a concept album on the Book of Enoch.
Interesting.
That's what I wanted to do. I ran it by Rich.
Yeah.
The first Enoch, the first 16 chapters of the Book of First Enoch are just fascinating.
Wow.
And it's really frowned upon in in a lot of scholarly circles.
Right.
And heretical and
Yeah.
shame on you. But Enoch is ancient text. That's that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
It is. They found scraps of the Book of Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the ancient Jewish literature. It's like a lot of those, like before Christ, the second temple period. Enoch was held in higher esteem than Moses.
Wow.
That's pretty well established. Of course, the Pharisees didn't like that very much.
Right.
But I'm not here to like pimp out the Book of Enoch or anything. but I've that book gave me a little extra clarity on some things. It just didn't make any sense until I read it.
Yeah. Well,
look at it as myth. Look at it as whatever you want. I don't care. It's just ancient text.
Right.
It's just ancient text. Reading. It's like if you want to read a book written from, Poe.
yeah.
It's interesting. It was written a while back, but still interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've got me curious. I'm gonna have to look into it more because I have not looked into some of those very much. I remember in high school, in particular, being fascinated by some of those type books. Of course, the Apocrypha and things like that. So I'm gonna have to look more into that. Check it out.
The Book of Jubilees, the Book of the Giants. It's fascinating reading.
Yeah.
It's just like, I love the Bible. There's nothing like it.
Right.
But what has happened is I've grown to love ancient literature.
Yeah.
Anything old.
Yeah.
So
of the time, stuff written.
Yeah, anything of the time, of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
How it's Anyway, it's a lot of fun.
Book number 2. When are we going to see book number 2 out?
Probably in the fall.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be called. It's the Divine Keep something.
Yeah.
Book 2.
Divine Keep Part 2, the sequel.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, again, just for our viewers and listeners, Divine Keep by Matt Smith. Definitely pick it up at Amazon.com. It is a fun read. It's got some great stuff in it. You'll have fun with it. Matt, thanks so much for coming on and talking with me today. This was a blast.
Thanks for caring enough to have me on. It means a lot.
I love it. I love talking to fellow creatives, no matter what. I write myself, but I'm kind of like those that have not completed a whole book yet. Been working on one for 10 years, but I love talking to fellow creatives and just getting into the creative process, finding out how things work. So this is a treat for me and hopefully for our viewers and listeners as well too. So
right on.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
All right, bud. We'll see you soon.
All righty.